Let's look at how to create curves in perspective and a little bit about how this helps us create sort of more complex organic forms or sort of, hard surface objects. Might be cars or things that need to have sort of curved surfaces and need to be accurate. Now, the basic sort of concept of having like a curved surface is, again, very similar to most other things in perspective. We can relate what happens on a flat surface to what happens on a curved surface, or sorry, a surface that's in perspective. And this should be fairly elementary. But if I might make this smart object, duplicate, and things I do here are going to sort of turn up here. So again, if I just sort of like draw a curve along here of some weird variety, you can see it's going to turn up here, and that's kind of great, but I've got the power of Photoshop here, so it's kind of cheating. But we can sort of base these curves on sort of easy to find, or perhaps sort of hard to find, who knows, sort of, aspects of grids or like non-curved surfaces. So, we can take elements which we know how to calculate in perspective, such as straight lines and lines that are kind of going to a vanishing point and stuff. Again, this is not the best sort of perspective. And we can sort of, if we sort of rig the game so that we, just creating a curved surface that sort of goes along these lines, then I can sort of quite easily just sort of draw that here, and then I can draw it in perspective here. So as I sort of say, okay, I'm going to have a curve that kind of goes like this. Obviously, it's going to sort of relate to those points. Now, obviously, that's easier said than done because, again, I'm doing it on a flat surface. But it's not too hard to sort of, again, take this concept and take those same points and sort of find them. Maybe if we say, because this is another concept which sort of becomes sort of useful, is, sort of maybe saying, okay, if I like mirror this surface and I want to sort of draw it over here, how do I sort of go about translating that? So we sort of say, okay, we're going to divide this up by, and this is not really going to talk about sort of how to mirror things. We can talk about that elsewhere. But just to sort of as an example, and I'm just sort of guessing these things. And it's sort of, it's not, it's kind of almost there. But yeah, the basic concept is over here, we sort of got halfway between this line, we've got a point, we've got a half point halfway down this line, right in the middle, there's a point, and up here is a point, and then we got a point halfway here. And the trick really is just to sort of figure out how to sort of draw a curve that goes sort of smoothly between these points. And, you can see, again, they're sort of remarkably similar, even though they're done different ways. So this does bring into importance the ability to sort of imagine what's happening and to sort of see if you can sort of start to approximate drawing curves through points. And obviously, the more points you have and the better you can understand the curve. A lot of this is sort of guessing. The more points you have, the easier it is. And also it's about sort of figuring out exactly which points along a curve you need, because not everything is on a grid. Often the curve is something which is sort of you might sort of have the side view of something, and we might want to sort of say, okay, I want to draw this in perspective. So like, how would you go about doing that? And the trick really is to sort of say, okay, well, maybe if we draw a box around it and divide the box up, then like where are these points sort of intersecting? Where's sort of the top of this? Where's this? So let's say, okay, that's maybe where those points are. Let's see if we can sort of find those in three-dimensional space. Now, you can measure it, or we can sort of guess. But this is kind of halfway. And maybe if we divide this up into sort of 3, dividing up into 3 is kind of a little bit trickier. But there's a few ways to do it. I'm going to divide the space by sort of half as normal. There we go. I need to erase that out a bit. Let's also try a center line here. So again, kind of imagining those are 3 equal parts. They could easily be sort of 4, but it's sort of a bit closer here. So there's a point there. And there's also a point sort of here. This looks like this is also 3. So again, you could try. Oh, we need to go the other way. So kind of here. So there's a line going up here. So again, there's lots of simpler ways you can do this, but I'm just sort of just going for it and saying like, you can just keep finding points, and you've got sort of abstract different, we could say like if we draw a line here, maybe this point of this curve is coming sort of here. So we've got a line here, here, and it's kind of close. We've got a line. This is here, and this is the half line. The half line, we could say, maybe it's also kind of there or a little bit lower. And then we've got this line, which over here, again, this is divided sort of, I'm just going to say it's divided in half. Divided in half here. There's a point there. And there's a point sort of, again, we could just divide this up, but I'm just going to sort of measure this and say, kind of, yeah, a third there. Again, you could probably sort of draw a line here and say, maybe if I sort of divided this in half and said, it's going to sort of be here, because we can sort of measure this over here. And then it's just a matter of connecting these up as best as possible. So now we've got, again, this sort of shape, but transferred into perspective. So that's the general idea. And again, what you'll find is that with this, we can start to build complex forms. So if we sort of think about the easiest one is sort of if we say, okay, we've got a box. And this is really where sort of the more complex forms you sort of know how to create, the better. So if we sort of say, let's also talk about sort of how you might sort of start to actually sort of construct something. So if we say we've got a plane in the middle of this sort of sphere, what we can do is we can not only start to sort of affect and think about this sort of contour, but we can actually sort of start to think about how to sort of combine them. So let's sort of say, okay, we've got this kind of line here. Let's sort of draw a line here like this. Now, what I need to do is sort of transfer this line here to both sides. But let's say maybe it doesn't go all the way there. It sort of goes only to here. So again, we're sort of creating a grid in here, and we're using this to sort of build this form. So I need to kind of find this top point, and once I've found that top point there, it's not actually too hard to sort of just draw a perspective line, and what's going to happen is that this point here is going to hit somewhere here, and I've got the top of this surface, so I can sort of say, okay, so I've got the top of the box, and down here I've got where it's going to hit the top of there, and now I've got the top of where it's going to hit here, and now it's going to hit here, and so it's here again. This kind of stuff really helps to play with this sort of thing. But what I'm doing is I'm sort of trying to extrapolate this curve here. And then maybe let's see if we can sort of find this curve back here. And again, I know where, if I sort of draw a line up here, I know where it hits the top. So I can just draw a line across here. And then I've got this face. So I've got this face here. What I need to do is draw a line down here. And this is where it's going to hit here. And now I need to figure out where it's going to hit on this plane. So it's sort of going to be back here. And it's going to be sort of around there. So this curve is going to kind of go like this. So again, the more that you can, let's try one here, see if I can get a feeling for, so it's going to be like this, it's going to be quite close to the ground. So again, I'm guessing a lot, and this is sort of quite a kind of small drawing, but I think it's important to understand that the solidarity that comes from doing these kind of drawings is not necessarily something that is, and so here we've got sort of form, maybe give it, think about maybe it's sort of an aeroplane or something. And this form, I won't go quite that far, but let's just sort of say, okay, I know where this is going to hit, because it sort of comes up here, and this is where this line goes, so I can sort of just sort of come down here. And we know it's going to hit the top of this. We know it's going to sort of go like this. And I can just sort of try and match these curves. Oh, this one's... No, that's right. Anyway, that's kind of roughly right. This is the general idea. Drawing is sort of freehand Photoshop sketching, which again is never the best for this, never the best for straight lines. But important to note that, again, if you sort of get the basics right, this will start to emerge, and you can get a very sort of solid sort of drawing by just sort of extrapolating these things. And so what I'm doing is that what you sort of see here is that I've got, and this is where having a box and sort of constructing something in a box sort of helps, is that I sort of got this form, right? And I know that there's a box around it, like this. I think this goes up there or something like that, right? And so what I can do is I can measure sort of up here, right? This is the top point of the curve. That's important to get. Again, around here is sort of where it hits. So these are important. This is just a perspective line because this is parallel. I don't know where this point is, but I do know where a point directly above it is because I can draw a line directly above it using perspective. I've already got that. I can draw a line like this one going into perspective, again, like this. And all of these are going to converge. So then it's the same. I need to find like the bottom. And what I need to do is measure this space because I know the vertical is there. I know where this line is because I can line it up on the grid. And I can just sort of say, okay, it's it's kind of here, and then that goes across, and then I can say, okay, this one goes across, and then it's quite easy to find these different points. So that's what it is. You're sort of sitting there hunting for different points, different bits and pieces here and there. And once we've kind of done this, again, you could sort of draw this in kind of a sketchier way, so that you can just go over the top and do it in one go. And so, like form drawing, sort of organic objects, what you'll find is that, especially with these kind of more complex sort of organic mechanical shapes, knowing sort of where the form goes really sort of helps if you ever want to come and do the actual construction and also render it. So now I know I've got this sort of curve here, and having that center line helped. And again, you can sort of keep adding complexity here and say, like, okay, maybe this thing has some sort of wheels, etc. But we'll just sort of leave it simple for the moment. But yeah, once you've kind of done all that and we've defined the edges, and we actually have a lot of information about the form now, so it's kind of becomes a lot easier to sort of render. We can, and of course you can also cast shadows in the very same way you would normally cast shadows on anything. Just by kind of drawing it down, doing all that sort of stuff in perspective. We can sort of think about, again, using the rendering skills we have to kind of start to get this looking sort of somewhat three-dimensional. Again, it's all just boxes and curves. That's all. There's nothing sort of special. Again, all the concepts of reflected light are going to play onto it. Again, if it's got some sort of cast shadow, I can just sort of approximate something. All those same concepts come into play. And this is sort of how you start to be able to render very complex forms with some degree of confidence. And that's just the basics of how it works, how you'd sort of create curves. And then obviously you can see kind of, if we needed to sort of modify this curve this way, we can also just use similar methods and kind of start to build almost like, a very sort of simple 3D mesh. This is like the simplest. You could also build something more complicated just by putting different points in different positions, and then we can calculate that as well. But this is the basics. It's just, again, the same concept that you get from the very first lesson of how to figure out the center of a square, is that we find points on a two-dimensional surface and then we transfer them. And if we can find those points, then we can do many, 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 many things.